The power brokers want to suppress the vote of the people. They want to make it harder for people to vote because fewer people voting makes it easier to target and influence a smaller audience. And unfortunately, we the people are playing into their hands. We don't vote. Hello again. Welcome to The Ruthless Truth. I am your host, Truth Davis. In this forum, I share opinions, thoughts, truths on a wide variety of topics based on what I believe to be a unique life experience. And you can read the details and more about that in the notes or in the bio. My intent is to share stories and experiences and hopefully provide some career and life lessons that will aid you in your journey. Please follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5, subscribe to the YouTube channel Ruthless Truth, and there's also a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. General format, I'll share some initial commentary on current news or just my thoughts. Then I'll have a deeper discussion on one topic, which will be today's truth. And then I like to finish with an American history fun fact. However, in today's episode, because of the length of other topics, there will not be an American history fun fact today, but I think that's only happened twice. Okay, first thing. This week marks the 1-year anniversary of the launch of The Ruthless Truth. I can't believe how fast the time went by. And I want to thank any and everyone who has ever even listened to a second of the program. In the past year, the podcast has been accessed from 475 cities and markets in the United States, and then from 57 countries from around the world. And surprisingly and inexplicably, the top 3 international markets in order are Singapore, Vietnam, and the United Kingdom. I can't explain that. If you have any thoughts or theories on it, I would love to hear it. I look forward to year 2, where you may soon see some format changes and potentially guests. I'm not sure yet, but what I do know is that I'm not ready to take live calls. I am so impressed and have so much respect for podcasters and online influencers who take calls, because there are a lot of extreme people out there with maddening and insane opinions, and I just don't think I would have the patience for it. Okay, let's get to the hot topic. In the previous episode, I referenced the recent Supreme Court ruling that eliminated race-based congressional districting. And almost immediately, many southern states initiated efforts to withdraw their congressional maps. Most notably, Tennessee only needed 3 days to call a special session to redraw the maps, approve the withdrawal maps through the legislature, and be signed into law by the governor. 3 days. Now, prior to this, there was only one majority Democrat, majority black congressional district out of a total of 9 in the state of Tennessee. Now, this district included Memphis, the largest majority black city in the United States. But in the new map, the Memphis district was split into thirds, and then each third was added to an existing district that included larger rural populations. So as a result, now all Tennessee congressional districts are majority Republican. Outrage ensued, lawsuits were filed, there have been protests at the Capitol in Nashville, accusing Tennessee of assaulting minority voting rights and returning to the 1950s. Look, I don't know how this will shake out, but I want to focus on another factor in this discussion, and that is voter turnout. The most important and powerful lever any group holds in this country is the power of their vote. high voter turnout would make the new congressional districts irrelevant. But at all levels in this country, federal, state, local, voter turnout is embarrassingly low. And the irony is, the right to vote is the only one right that is truly an equal right for all Americans. A struggling rural farmer has the exact same voting privilege as a billionaire in Silicon Valley. Now, I'll tell you that this is very frustrating to the rich and powerful. They think they should have more power or more votes than that rural farmer because of their self-importance. But that's not how the country works. Or at least, that's not how it's supposed to work. So, given this, the power brokers want to suppress the vote of the people. They want to make it harder for people to vote because fewer people voting makes it easier to target and influence a smaller audience. And unfortunately, we the people are playing into their hands. We don't vote. Okay, as evidence, let's look at the 2024 presidential election. Okay, 75 million people voted for Kamala Harris. All right. And while Trump often boasts about achieving a landslide victory, in reality, only 2 million more people voted for him, as he amassed 77 million votes. Do you know how many people stayed home and didn't vote at all? 89 million. Yes, the largest voter segment in the last presidential election was comprised of the registered voters who did not vote for anyone. You know, we need to lift up and normalize voting as a civic responsibility and duty. I vote in every election in which I am eligible, no matter how small the election, because that's how I was raised. And there was one pivotal moment in that raising. I remember like it was yesterday. I was 18 years old, sitting having breakfast with my parents on a Thursday morning in June. And my mom casually says to me, "Hey, be sure to vote today before you go to work because the polls will be closed when you get off." And I said, "Oh, I'm not registered to vote." Man, my dad put down his newspaper and exploded. "Boy, people died so you could vote. You are not going to live in this house and not be registered. When you finish breakfast, you're going to go down to the election office and you are going to register today. People died so you could vote." And it's true. American history is filled with tragedy and violent actions to keep minorities and other groups from voting. If nothing else, that should tell you the power of your vote. Why else would people try so hard to keep it from you? Voting actually scares politicians. Sure, they beg for your vote when they're running for office, but once they get in, they don't want a lot of voters because high turnout favors the challengers. Voting can eliminate some of the biggest complaints about our leaders in Washington. One of the voter complaints is, we should have term limits or age limits. Well, the pushback from the elected officials is that, voters must approve of them because they keep reelecting them. So if you don't want to keep seeing the same old leaders in office, turn out and vote for someone else. Another argument. Well, my vote doesn't really matter. That is not true. In 1960, John F. Kennedy defeated Richard Nixon for president by a margin equivalent to less than 1 vote per precinct nationwide. That's how close that election was. In fact, go to 2000. George Bush won Florida by 537 votes out of almost 6 million votes cast. This is the result that propelled him to victory in the presidential election. So, my message, my plea is for everyone to take voting seriously. I often say, if you don't vote, you can't complain. We need to instill these values in our children. I even support vote shaming those who choose to stay home. Citizens need to understand that voting is not only a right, it's a responsibility. And all the redrawing of maps would be irrelevant if voters turned out in large numbers, regardless of their district boundaries. Vote. Again, go vote. Okay, let's get to today's truth. Today's truth. Today's truth is part 2 of my discussion of current dynamics between black men and black women. If you missed part 1 from last week, let me summarize. I said I needed to first focus on black men, independent of black women. Then in today's segment, I would address black women and the interaction of both groups. So, the part 1 discussion summary. For their first 300 years in this country, black men were subjected to a system that aimed to emasculate them, robbing them of their roles of providers, protectors, and heads of households. First through slavery, and later via Jim Crow laws, limited employment opportunities, and other forms of oppression. As a result, while most men, regardless of race, seek to present masculine traits, when you look just at black men, studies indicate these traits just get stronger. And what are these traits? Be tough, dominate, stay in control, and handle your business solo. And what do they seek in women? Well, they want their women to be soft, supportive, peaceful, needy, vulnerable, pious, and most of all, submissive. But is this how women aspire to behave or relate? Okay, that was the summary of part 1. Now, let's continue today and let's look at black women. Similar to black men, the image of black women in this country was initially shaped during slavery, but differently than it was for the men. The portrayal of black women in American history has been defined by harmful, dehumanizing stereotypes, such as the Mammy, the Jezebel, and Sapphire, used to justify slavery and inequality. And these caricatures, appearing in media from the 1800s onward, often depicted black women as either submissive servants, hypersexualized, or loud and aggressive. Negative stereotypes, specifically the Jezebel figure, were constructed to portray black women as naturally promiscuous, shifting blame for sexual assault by white men away from perpetrators. In a famous 1962 speech, Malcolm X said, quote, "The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. And the most neglected person in America is the black woman." And he didn't stop there. He then encouraged black men to protect their women. Again, I quote, "If the white man will do whatever is necessary to see that his woman gets respect and protection, then you and I will never be recognized as men until we stand up like men and pay the same penalty over the head of anyone who puts his filthy hands out to put it in the direction of our women." And you know what? Until the 1960s, most black men did exactly that. Extensive research and census data confirmed that African Americans aged 35 and older were more likely to be married than white Americans starting from 1890 until the late 60s. So how did we get to where we are today, where the breakup of two celebrities that none of us personally know results in men and women taking battle sides against each other? Men saying, well, Hope can never be a housewife, and women yelling that men don't know how to appreciate and respect a black queen. How did we get here? Some say it's because as black women became more independent, especially financially, they became less in need of a man, making it more difficult for the man to assume the dominant role. Others say our culture de-emphasized the importance of marriage, decreasing the need for couples to compromise and work together to build long-lasting relationships. But you know what? It really doesn't matter how we got here, because this needs to stop. First of all, none of us know what happened with Klay Thompson and Meg Thee Stallion. We don't know. So how can we have such strong opinions with no information? It's their business. And we need to reverse this trend of men and women separating. Tell me if you've experienced this. When I go to brunch, the most common configuration I see is large tables of only women. And of course, there are the frequent girl trips. Men are no better. We get together in our man caves with our boys for hours. And even at joint events like a cookout or a reunion, you will see women and men huddled in different groups. Have we reached the point where we can only socialize when there is the potential for intimacy? Well, I by no means have all the answers, but I have thought a lot about this, and it means a lot to me. So I do have a few suggestions for you to consider. Again, not a solution, but perhaps the start of a much needed bridging of the gap. First, to black men and women, you are not enemies. You have shared heritage, challenges, unfair depictions, and opposition. You both have to deal with external stereotypes, workplace politics and bullshit, and of course racism. Given this, why then battle with each other? We should provide refuge and a safe place for each other. Next, when beginning a new relationship, before becoming intimate, take some time to get to know each other as people. So often, potential couples will spend time with each other. They'll go on a few dates, but they don't really talk about anything. Instead of debating the latest social media trends, why don't you ask about interests, leisure, activities, priorities, concerns? And you should ask yourself, what do I really know about this person? If you're only looking for sex or a meal ticket, then that's all you're going to get. Third, don't let your friends sabotage your relationship prospects. I often say, you shouldn't take money advice from a broke person, and you don't take relation advice from a woman who has no man. I have no doubt your friends mean well and are just looking out for your best interests, but they can sometimes be a negative influence. The best way to keep people out of your business is to not tell them your business. Now, I am directing this comment to women because men don't talk to each other about anything meaningful anyway. They don't tell each other shit. Okay, next one. This is a big one. Women, when you get frustrated or disappointed, stop accusing men of being gay. This is now almost a reflex reaction. I heard it a lot after the Meg Klay breakup. I read comments like, well, if he can't be satisfied by Meg, he must not like women. Or he must want to be with a woman. Be with a man. What? This is crazy talk. Now, I recognize that the down low is a real thing. And there are indeed gay men who hide their sexuality. But the fact is only 10 to 15% of men are gay. Meaning almost all the men you know or meet are straight. So just stop with the he must be gay. It's ignorant and most likely untrue. And to the men, stop asking about or caring about body count for a lot of reasons. Okay, first, it makes you look insecure and weak. Second, your expectations of a low body count are unreasonable. If a 35-year-old woman sleeps with just one new partner a year, her body count will be about 20. Third, it's hypocritical. What's your own body count? Why isn't that a poor reflection of you? Men don't seem to feel embarrassed about their own high body count. And finally, and most importantly, you'll never, ever know the real body count number. Because if she does give you an answer, it's probably a lie. And it's a lie that you can never verify. There's no way for you to know. So just don't ask. Let it go. Okay, another one. You got to stop blaming each other. Stop the finger pointing. You know, life is full of disappointment. And unfortunately, far too often, people lash out to those closest to them. I mean, it's easy. And within any relationship, there will always be conflicts. Rarely is it 100% the fault of one person, except perhaps in an incident of infidelity. But otherwise, you both probably played a role. So before you go into attack mode, just take a breath and honestly consider what could have possibly done. What could you have possibly contributed to it? Conflict resolution is key to any long-term relationship. Active communication, shared responsibility, these are the critical factors. Finally, we need to develop mutual respect for each other. Respect each other as people, okay? Seek first to understand before forming opinions. You know, few things hurt more than being dismissed or undervalued. You know, the lack of respect is more common than you may think. Here's something I've always found puzzling. Every man has a mother, and many men have sisters and or daughters. These men respect and protect these women that are close to them. So, how can you then go out in the world and be a misogynist? I was recently speaking to a friend who has adult daughters, and they wanted to go to Hooters for lunch. But he said he was uncomfortable taking them into that environment. You know, it was a bad depiction of women. And I said, okay, are you afraid that they will see a Hooters girl and then want to become one? And secondly, what's wrong with being a Hooters girl? He said that wasn't it, but he just wanted to be protective of his daughters. I said, okay. And here's what's crazy. The man I'm referring to here is very promiscuous. Now, he's not married, so it's not like he's cheating on someone, but he has and always has multiple women in his life. And so I just asked him, did you ever consider that every woman you mistreat is someone else's daughter? Silence for at least 30 seconds. And I realized, no, he had not ever considered that. Amazing. The ability to compartmentalize and rationalize is simply amazing. So I just ask men to recognize that every woman is someone's daughter. And are you treating women the way you would want your daughter to be treated? You know, when you respect someone, you don't want them to be hurt. And you definitely don't want to be the one to hurt them. Let's eliminate the name calling. And I'm not going to list the names here, but you know what people say about each other when men are attacking women or women are judging men. All right, let me see if I can wrap this up. I believe that men and women have an opportunity to improve their mutual relationships and interaction. It feels that we're more adversarial than ever in our relationships and communications. But Black men and women should be each other's greatest supporters and advocates, both in general, within, particular relationships. Black women and men need to invest the time to get to know each other as people and foster mutual respect. You are not enemies. But I am somewhat optimistic and hopeful things will improve, because we're all living in uncertain and perilous times. All of you have enough to deal with in the external world. We cannot really afford infighting. I mean, really at any time, but especially now. Let's all work together to make things better. Okay, that's all I have for you today on The Ruthless Truth. Thank you so much again for listening. Thank you for helping me reach the 1-year anniversary milestone. Again, follow me on Truth Davis 5 on Instagram. Subscribe to the Ruthless Truth YouTube channel. And there's also a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. And I invite you to look at the episodes from the past year. They cover a broad range of topics. I'm sure you'll find some subject matter that is helpful to you. Thanks again, and I will talk to all of you soon.